gross, creepy stuff. Loving it. He injects her with his pods, so like little edamame beans. Literally was the most insane thing I have ever read in my life. Hey guys, what's going on? I hope you're doing well. If I look like I'm doing something weird down here, my cat's down here, okay? Sorry, she needs attention. But this week, I just wanted to go over my June wrap-up because I read a lot. I just came out of the Once Upon a Readathon, Hannah's Readathon. Team Pirates, by the way, we won. I never had any doubts. But I have a lot to go over. I read a lot. I read kind of a variety, all romance, of course, but you know, a variety within romance. So I have like historicals, I got fantasy romance, I got some 5 stars, which you probably already know what those are. And then I have some really weird smut. I'm not saying that I'm proud of myself because I read for the page count, I read for the points, okay? I needed to log those points, so I made some exceptions to what I was willing to read, and I'm kind of scarred, honestly, so we need to talk about it. There's literally something that, like, I can't get the image out of my head, so I'm gonna put it in your head. You're welcome. But anyways, let's just jump into it. I'm going to start with the full-fledged books here. Why don't we go ahead and get the DNFs and the 5 stars out of the way, because you likely can guess the 5 stars. So my 5-star books here, of course, the Mate Games, which, by the way, I'm doing a read-along. So Hannah and I, we have our own Discord called The Hideaway. I'll leave the link down below. But we do read-alongs together where it's like a live read-along so we can all read it together. Book 2 of the Mate Games War, we're going to be doing this Sunday. So if you want to join, 3 p.m. Eastern over here on my channel. And it's a wild ride, babe. All right? But I reread the first book because we were doing that. And of course, amazing. That one I'm not giving 5 stars, though. I'm going to give that one actually a 4-star. I should say that. That one's a 4-star because the 5-star one comes later. But the other 5-star Mate Games is actually the second series, book 3. I just finished that up on Audible again. And of course, it's always like they hit it out of the park. The second series, amazing. The first series is amazing. But the second series, it's even better, babe. And like I said, it's worth every damn cent, okay? You should get it on Audible. Just trust me on it. Invest. Invest in yourself. That's really what it is. So that's all I'll say. It was fantastic. But beyond that, getting actually to the DNF, I read Hooked by MC Frank. That was the one I was telling you guys I was so excited about because it's kind of like a fantasy sort of vibe. It's a fairy tale retelling of Peter Pan, but it's set in like Regency England. Amazing. Where like literally Captain Hook, he's a viscount, but he's not really like a great father. He's rather abusive. Wendy's very lonely. We come in on them, basically Peter and her being very young, very early, like teen years, you can say. And Peter is essentially an orphan and he goes to, is it a boarding school? I can't quite remember now. I think it's a boarding school, but it's kind of a boarding school where parents, wealthy parents, don't really want those children anymore, so they're treated very, very poorly. So it's practically a poorhouse, but it's being disguised as a boarding school. Okay, so there is some definitely darker elements to this book, and I was excited about it. I'm not gonna lie, I've been into Peter Pan retellings, but this didn't quite hit, mainly because it had a really interesting concept, but the way that they were kind of talking felt wrong. It didn't even feel like they were trying to talk as if it really was Regency England. It didn't seem like she was trying to like recreate accents or recreate the common sort of verbiage people would use. It just felt, I don't know if inauthentic's the best word to say, but it didn't match the vibe of the story. So that was distracting to me. But also, I got about 50% of the way in, and we're still dealing with them in their childhood. So that's not a romance. I don't want to read a romance where I'm mostly in their childhood. What? Like, no. So I kind of soft DNF'd it. It wasn't like a hard DNF. Like I've talked to you guys before about some where I was just like, this is the worst book I've ever read in my life. It wasn't like that. It was just, it needed finessing. It needed some revisions, I think. But the concept was there. But I don't know if I necessarily ask you to read it. Okay. I'm going to give it 2.5 stars for now, but I did soft DNF it. So maybe it gets better in the end. But moving on from there, I actually want to go ahead and talk about my historical romances since we're talking about Regency England. And I did a couple sort of like buddy reads and like book exchanges. So I actually ended up reading Gentle Rogue by Joanna Lindsey because this was my pirate book exchange with April from Happily Ever April. This is one of her favorite pirate books. And it is really good. I'm really happy because I've read, I think it's called A Pirate's Love by Joanna Lindsey. And that one was a wee bit grapey. So I was nervous going in. I'm not going to lie, I was very nervous. But it's just a sweet sort of story. It starts out like we have a girl and she's kind of always been within like the shipping sort of community because of her family. And she's actually from America going over to England because there was this guy, I believe it was like 5 years ago, who went off to war and he was supposed to be her fiance and promised to marry her when he got back, but he never came. Okay, what an ass. So she basically follows him there and confronts him, and he has a family. So that's a surprise. So she's basically just trying to get out of England as fast as she can because she's mortified and she's sad, and she ends up getting onto this boat that belongs to this guy that she kind of had a little bit of a run-in with, a little kerfuffle, if you will, and she's disguising herself as a cabin boy because she can't be a woman on a ship, okay? And he knows the entire time. Like, he recognizes it's her, but he kind of puts her through her paces and all that jazz. So it's fun watching their dynamic, watching the scenes that sort of play out between them and her getting frustrated and being worried he's going to find out and him knowing the entire time. So it's fun. It's a good Joanna Lindsey book. I would recommend it. It's very, very sweet, very well written, of course. I think I'm going to give it 4 stars. Yeah, I'm going to give it 4 stars. The only reason I'm not giving it 5 is I do like the girl, but she does come off a little bratty in the beginning, you know, very stubborn, always gets her way sort of vibe. And I'm not too much into bratty girls, so 4 stars. But the next historical romance I read, this was my first Viking romance, and I was so excited. I did this with Autumn from Nose in a Book, and we were doing a buddy read. So we were just chit-chatting the whole time we were reading it. And I cannot tell you, like, it's called Forbidden Passions. The cover, obviously, amazing. But it started off so good, so good. Like, I already was like, oh, this is a perfect book for a fantasy romance reader who wants to get into historicals. Amazing. It's got the action, it's got the storyline, we got the bad guys, we got the good guys, we got our girl trying to escape something that's terrible happening to her. When you're meeting our heroes, he's upset with her because he's been enslaved because of what happens to him and his crew. She buys them, so he's frustrated that he's being owned, let alone by a woman. And then she has to hire on this other captain that is just like, he's a douche. I'm gonna be straight, he's a douche. He's a terrible guy. And he comes on and he's being like cruel to the slaves and she doesn't like it, but at the same time, she owns them. So it's this really interesting sort of complicated nature of how they're feeling about each other in the beginning, and there's so much going on in the plot as far as who's a good guy, who's a bad guy, who's acting terribly because they're in a frustrating situation. It was great. It was great in the beginning, but then I'm just gonna tell you, when bad guys die, the story starts to tank. Okay, and it starts to tank real fast. It loses that whole adventure kind of fantastical element, which is such a bummer, and it becomes like instantaneous love. And it's just like, come on, man. Our girl, who was really smart in the beginning, making good, clever decisions because she's trying to get out of this terrible situation, all of a sudden she becomes like ridiculously dumb. Making very, very obviously poor decisions. And our guy, like, he was hired to go get her and bring her back to his chief, if you will, because they're going to get married. But she doesn't know that, and she doesn't like the fact that she's been promised to a man that she's never met before. Okay? And our guy falls in love with her because he didn't realize who it was at first. And then he's still just like, no, I have to take you back, even though I'm totally in love with you. And I already defiled you, and I know, because he mentions it, I know that he's going to try and kill you because I defiled you. But I'm still going to give you to him. You know, like, that's, it was interesting. It was interesting. It was so well written in the beginning, though, so it's kind of a bummer. I think I'm going to give it a 2.75. 3 feels too high, but 2.5 feels too low. So 2.75, babe. Carrying on, back to the rest of the books here. I want to talk about The Bright Gay Seas. Quite a few of us listened to it. I don't really know how I feel about it. It's essentially, obviously, it's a gay plot line. We have our man here who he's younger, and his father basically gets caught in an intimate situation with another young man, and his father hates it and essentially sells him off to these pirates. And come to find out, lo and behold, the pirates he was sold to, they seem like these big, burly, scary guys. They're actually just all gay and having a grand old time, loving each other. They're fantastic pirates. They're clean, which is not a thing for pirates. They have mojitos. Mojitos come up a lot. How they're cold on the ship, I don't know, but, you know, this is a work of fiction. But it's interesting. I think where I was bummed, I guess, it is like kind of a sweet storyline, but given like the cover of the book and the name of the book, I think I was expecting a little bit more comedy within it. And you did have some comedic relief, especially when they kept mentioning the mojitos. But it definitely was a little more serious than what I was expecting. So I think I'm going to give it, I don't know, between 3 and 3.5 stars. But I think that's because I went in with the wrong expectations. But anyways, moving on. Oh, God, yeah, the next one. Okay, Cursed. I literally started out the month with this. This is by Kay Lorraine, my girly pop. Sorry, I got girly pop from Tori. Tori Between Pages. She says that, and now it's stuck in my head. But I love Kay Lorraine. She's the author of the Make Games, one of the authors. And so I read this to kind of get a feel of what's going on, because it's a Sleeping Beauty retelling, we got dragons, and it's basically kind of like a why choose situation. But this didn't quite hit the same. So I love Kay Lorraine, but I think now I can see where her strengths are versus Meg Ann, the other author of the Make Games. So they make an incredible duo together. But this book by just Kay Lorraine, it kind of fell flat. Our girl, Sleeping Beauty, she's essentially like a part of Hollywood royalty, and her mother passed away from basically going crazy, if you will. And it's believed that there's a curse on her, and her father talks about it, but she never actually really believes it. She just thinks he's starting to go crazy because of the loss of his the loss of his wife, Jesus. But then she ends up going to another country because the prince invites her, and he's treating her all well and believes in the curse and that he can break her curse. But then his brother comes, and he's the evil brother, Maleficent. And they're kind of fighting and warring over her of which one of them is really the one that's going to break the curse. I don't know. I think there wasn't as much like comedy, I guess you can say, as there was in the Make Games. And it just kind of fell flat. Like, I listened to it, but I wasn't really excited at any point through it. I didn't really feel much. It kind of was just one level, if that makes sense. So I actually wouldn't recommend it. It was kind of cool, though, that I was able to see some characters from the Make Games in this. But it just wasn't for me. Also, the Audible version of it, I love J.F. Harding, but the voice that he did for Mal, the evil brother, which, of course, that's the one I want the evil one, he kind of just sounded like an old man. So that didn't help. I have 2 more books here. Both of these were actually really good. So the first one, the mermaid one, this was The Tides That Binds Us. I believe I talked to you guys about this in past video sometime within May. And this was the one that was touted as like a holographic mermaid's dream come true. And it was fun. It is very sweet. Like, it's definitely a romance. You definitely have a little heat in here. But it's sweet. Like, there's the holographic nature is really because there's bioluminescence. But we have there's a queen. She's human, but she does have mermaid blood in her. So she presents having like bright colored hair and things like that. So you can see her mermaid blood in her, but she has legs, all right? And she's a queen, but the actual mermaids out in the sea, they don't really respect her very much because they want a mermaid. And then the other kingdoms surrounding them, the other humans, they are run by kings, particularly this one who's an absolute asswipe, and they don't really respect her either. So the storyline is really about her, and something happens on her lands, specifically with the mermaids, and she has to deal with the situation, and she's dealing with the mermaids not liking her and this other kingdom not liking her, but this other kingdom also finds the mermaids to kind of be a threat. So there's this, she's in between a rock and a hard place, if you will. So she's trying to deal with the situation, but she's just kind of become queen. She doesn't believe in herself. She has a massive imposter syndrome, which totally understand that. I think a lot of us do. So you're kind of watching her deal with this situation, and when you read it, you can tell like she's someone you would respect, and she totally seems like she has it together. But then when you're in her POV, you can see that she doesn't believe in that. So you really do get to see that imposter syndrome play out, which the author did a really great job at writing that. But she ends up kind of meeting this other mermaid who's now has legs because she's been cursed by that douchebag of a king. And that's kind of where this love comes in. And she kind of gets this understanding of mermaid's nature, and she gets closer to her. And the mermaid kind of helps boost her ego and helps her through all of this. So it is a really sweet story, but there is a really great plot line under it too, and relatability, I would say. So I'd recommend it. I think it's great. I'm gonna give it 4 stars, I think. It's a quick little read. I think it's like 130 pages, so I'd give it a try if you're in the mood for something sweet. All right? Okay, so the next one is actually probably my favorite read of June, if I'm being honest, and it's actually another sapphic retelling. But this is called Of Tides and Snow by Darva Green. I was telling you guys about this. This was like one of the ones that was on my top of the list because it's a fairy tale retelling, which I have been loving, but it also has pirates, which is one of my favorite things. So, of course I had to read it. But we essentially kind of have a Snow White retelling that she's not literally named Snow White. There's definitely a different sort of plot line, but you can see all the elements from Snow White. Like we still have the huntsman. We still actually have her name being Snow, but that's not her real name. That's all I'll say. It's just worked in really well. It's fantastic. But essentially we have a priestess who originally she was a princess of another country. There was a war, and she essentially was the thing that kind of gave them peace. They traded her to the other side, which is how she's becoming a priestess. She's literally about to go through her ascension, but she has a lot of power. Like it's very obvious she has a lot of power. And the high priestess, who has her mirror, knows that she's essentially going to be the one that outdoes her and bees her demise. So she tries to actually kill our Snow, sends out the huntsman and everything, which literally is the catalyst for our whole story. She runs off. We still have mentioning of the dwarves. She ends up running into these pirates who end up taking her captive, but it's this interesting dynamic of like how she builds relationships with these people because they end up finding out that she's the long lost princess, which people adore and they love, and it's interesting. She falls in love with her captain, which Morgan, I love Morgan. She's literally, like I did a video from Hannah's, like her questionnaire of like a fantasy romance questions. Morgan's definitely my best friend now. I finally found my female best friend. But Morgan, she's basically cursed and she can't let anybody get close to her. Like she literally can't. She wants to, like her and Snow have this connection that's just very unreal. She wants to, lean into it, but she can't because of her curse. So she kind of has to keep her at a distance, be rather cold to her. It's a fun sort of tug and pull situation. I liked it. I'm gonna give it 4 stars. That's all I'll say. I don't want to like give too much away, but it's just such an interesting concept for a Snow White retelling to have these priestesses and this magic and the pirates sort of worked in with these curses. There's a touch of horror. I wouldn't call it like a full-on horror book. I would say it's more horror light, but it's good. I recommend it. I highly recommend it. I think you should read it, but anyways, I'll carry on because I know this video is getting long. But anyways, these are the ones I was telling you that I'm not necessarily proud of. Like I'm the type, I need comedic sort of smut. Like I need something that's gonna make me laugh, make me feel something, or it needs to be like really creepy in some way. When it's serious, I usually don't like it. Like I don't know, it's just hard for me, okay? And I apparently picked up some that I thought would be comedic that really weren't. Okay, so I think I'm gonna rapid fire these. I don't think you guys need the full-on details of each one, but I got a dozen here. I thought I was gonna read more, but if you saw my last video announcing my readathon, you now know why. I was very busy, but this is what I have. Lair of the Dragoness, weird. This is basically a giant dragon. There's the author, I'm gonna say this, she kind of has a fetish with giants and being in their stomachs, okay? This one, I don't really recommend. Not really comedic. teeth. This one I don't think I'd recommend, but it is weird, and there was a little part that was like horrific that made me smile, which is really bad. But we basically got a guy, he's able to turn into a sharks, which apparently sharks are like dragons, and they got 2 peens, guys. So didn't know that? You learn something new every day. But there's a part where she's literally trying to get away from him because she realizes, oh my God, this guy's a shark. Trying to get away. Her friend's like coming in, trying to save her from the cove. And then he just swims up, his sharky little self, and he just jumps up and he bites the shit out of her. And there's just like a bunch of blood everywhere. Like, it's just, that part was very gory and horrific, and I loved it. And it did make me smile because I'm a sicko. But the rest of it, meh. Okay. Next one, Taken by the Swamp. I thought this would be comedic. I was also hoping that it was literally going to be the swamp. I don't know what that means, guys. I thought someone else would be more creative than me and figure out a way for us to sexualize water, I guess. Which I don't know what that means about myself. That's what I wanted, but I digress. It's basically like this plant thing. It's kind of like an Ent from the Lord of the Rings, but he's, you know, he's horny, I guess. But he has like these creepy teeth, and he injects her with his pods. So like little edamame beans, basically like that, but bigger, I guess. Injects her. There's a thing about people talking about descended stomachs. I don't know if that's a kink or if that's a thing. If that's your thing, hey, you do you, boo. But every time I hear the word descended, gross. Okay, moving on. Plundered by the pirates. This is exactly what you think it is, okay? Like, literally, the chick, she was on a ship, just, you know, doing her normal girly things because it's a regular-ass ship where she can just cross the ocean to wherever she needs to get going. But then these damn pirates come, and she's like the spoils of war, and they spoil the hell out of her. All of them do. It talks about that she liked it, but, like, it was a lot. There she blows. Next one. This one, I wouldn't say it's comedic. The cover's gold, but it's essentially about Halloween night and how like creatures can kind of like come back to life. But most people don't know that, including our girl. And she's on like this pirate ship tour, but she happens to be the only one there. And the pirate that she comes across, thinking he's like, you know, some guy, some employee who's just dressed up in garb for Halloween. Turns out he's real and he's dead. And he has like skin falling off and like a bunch of blood, like a bullet hole went through the back of his head. Like gross, creepy stuff. Loving it. But then you get to the serious part where they're kind of, you know, they're getting frisky. And that's where it starts to get too serious and it lost me. I wish it kept the comedy. I really, really did. But he was described in an interesting, creepy way. So I'll say that. Taken by the Dragon. Actually, I'm going to do these 3 all together. Taken by the Dragon, The Dragon's Bride, and Offered to the Dragon. I'm gonna be straight with you. I don't really remember these all. I think they're all pretty much the same story. They're all taken by a dragon. And they're not dragon shifters, you guys. Like all of these were, this was bestiality. I read bestiality. That's totally what it was. That's totally what it was. And it messed with me. Like I was literally like, I was waiting like for them to change. And they didn't, okay? And all of them, just so you know, they weren't all like ridiculously large dragons that you like picture like in Game of Thrones. They're just a little bit bigger than, they're basically a horse, is what I'm getting at actually, with wings. But it was just, it was a lot, and I never want to read anything like that again. Moving on. Taken by the Pirate King. Oh, wait. Is Plundered by the Pirates and Taken by the Pirate King the same? I don't know. I don't remember that one. It's, my mind is just, it's all a blur, okay? But I read it. I hope that's valuable information for you guys. But, okay, the last one now. This one I am going to go into detail because I am scarred from it, okay? And you need to be too, I guess. But this just, like, this, I'm not going to say it was good. It wasn't good. But there's an image in my head, and I'm not going to be able to lose it until I'm dead. All right? It's called In Her Wake. This is our girl who did Lair of the Dragoness. It's about another giant. They're in the ocean. The giant basically saves these people on a ship from a whirlpool. The female captain needs to show her appreciation, and she does it in the way that you think, but she's a freaking giant. So, like, literally it talks about how The giant places her on her breast and like she wraps her arms around her nipple and just, you know, starts licking. But she's like this, so her tongue's just a tiny little thing. Like, it's the most ridiculous thing. But that's not even the worst part yet. So you have stuff like that where you're just like, this is utter nonsense, utter nonsense. But then she places her to the nether regions, if you will, and our girl literally gets like a freaking running start and just jumps right in and dives and goes in the canal, okay? And she starts dancing jig, okay? Like, she literally just starts dancing, like jazz hands and shit, to be a vibrator, okay? A human vibrator. I am so uncomfortable right now. I read that, okay? Like, what? Someone thought of that, you guys. And then, like, she takes her feet, starts moving her. Like, it literally was the most insane thing I have ever read in my life. And then at the end, I don't know if you're supposed to choose, like, oh, is this a happy ending? Or did she trick her? Because the giant basically is like, oh, I want to take you down to my home, which is in the bottom of the ocean. So you need to be in a space where you can still breathe. Okay? Which, by the way, if she was in the canal, how was she breathing? Oh, and it floods. You guys, I can't. Like, I can't. When she danced a jig, you know, after doing that for a little bit, it floods. She would die. Like, what? But then the giant, like I said, wants to take her to her home, you know, show her space, all that jazz. So she takes her out of there and puts her in her mouth and swallows her. So, like, okay, is this a sad ending? Like, did she trick her? Did she just eat her? Or is she literally just hanging out in her tummy and she's gonna, like, regurgitate her when they're in their home? Actually, I just realized something. I hope it's regurgitation, man. Oh my God, I really hope that's not what she was thinking. Okay, whatever. Okay, that's it. That's it, guys. I'm done. That's everything that I read. I kind of feel like I'm forgetting something, but that is still a lot. I can't believe I read that much, honestly. Especially, like, if you saw my announcement video for my readathon, you know that I was busy. So thank you, Hannah, for pushing me for Once Upon a Readathon. I read so much. Quite a bit of it was garbage, but that's okay. I read it. So anyways, that's it, you guys. If I see you on Sunday during the read-along for the Make Games, it will be 3 p.m. Eastern over here on my channel. Or if you're a part of my readathon already, I'll leave the sign-up link down below if you want to check it out. I guess also with the announcement video. But we have a Discord, so we can chat on the daily. We can talk book recs. We can talk step backs. We have a channel going on right now with all of our historical romance step backs. But we can chat through there. So if I see you over there, cool. Otherwise, if I don't see you till next week, I'll catch you then. Bye.